Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's book review. And it will be Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, Book 1, The Sword of Summer. The author is Rick Riordan. This book has 491 pages, and it was released on October 6th, 2015. This book is, I guess it's a fantasy book. Rick Riordan is the author of the Percy Jackson series and also the author of the Kane Chronicles, which I reviewed recently with the Egyptian gods. This focuses on the Norse mythology, so like Thor, Odin, Loki, etc. The main character is Magnus Chase. So the premise is pretty interesting. It starts right away with the main character, Magnus Chase, dying. And I find that interesting because, like every other character, a lot of books, the main character doesn't typically die right in the beginning if they do die. But it is a tragic death, I guess. But I guess the bright side is that he ends up being chosen by a Valkyrie and brought to Valhalla to become an eternal warrior waiting for Ragnarok. I'm not going to spoil much, but so the reason he dies is because a fire giant named Surt comes to Earth trying to find the Sword of Summer. And it's around the same time that he's of the age that he can inherit the Sword of Summer. He's not aware of his roots to Norse mythology. He's just a homeless kid. His mother died 2 years before. But he notices strange things start happening on his 16th birthday. And then leads to the series of events where he has to face off with Surt in the beginning, and he ends up dying. And the Sword of Summer gets lost again. So the gist of the book is he has to find the Sword of Summer and prevent Surt from unleashing this wolf, Fenris wolf, which would cause a chain of events, which would basically start Ragnarok, which is in Norse mythology the apocalypse, like the end of days. So that's the premise. Now, what I found interesting about this book is, and in the later ones I'll talk about other things, but is his main characters, the group. He kind of gives some of them. He doesn't make them all like this typical, he's Magnus Chase, for example, is honestly the least, in my opinion, the least interesting of the group. He's still a good character. It's written the first person narrative, and he always has a sarcastic, witty comment or retort, or the way the story is presented in this first person narrative is like, it's like Magnus Chase is talking to us, the audience, the reader, and as the reader, like, he'll throw in his own sarcastic, sly thoughts about what's going on constantly. But then there's the Valkyrie, the main Valkyrie, which he becomes friends with eventually, the one who chooses him to go to Valhalla. Her name is Sam, but really it's Samira Al-Abbas. She is a Muslim. And there is a bit of a focus on her culture and her, this kind of struggle between, she's a devout Islamic, she's a devout follower of the Islamic faith. And she follows her and practices her religion, and she tries to keep a normal life, but she's also a devout servant, I guess, to Odin as a Valkyrie. And she's kind of being pulled between her normal life and her Valkyrie life, I guess. Then there's his friends Blitzen and Hearthstone. They go by the short names of Blitz and Hearth. Blitz ends up, we find out, is a dwarf, and he has a funny, like, his quirk is that he's really into fashion. Hearthstone is the one I found the most interesting. Rick Riordan the author made Hearthstone hearing impaired. He's a deaf character, and he's an elf, which elves are typically supposed to be known for really good hearing, their ears, right? So anytime there's conversations with Hearthstone, he actually writes that they're signing. Hearthstone can read lips, but obviously in certain situations the lack of hearing plays out, and he's not like, there's not like this special quality, like, oh, he's deaf but he's special because like there's something secret. No, he's just, that's how he was born and that's how he is, and he's still like a normal, I want to say person, elf, whatever. And I found that great. Like he's trying to include different people with different walks of life, and not every character is just like this, you know, able-bodied, normal, whatever, or, you know, the typical, whatever you want to call it. He's throwing in all this like diversity. Why I also really like Hearthstone, I'm probably realizing now he's my favorite character in the whole trilogy, is he's the mage of the group. And as this trilogy progresses, I've already read all 3 of them, but I'll get to them later, the next 2. But as the trilogy progresses, Hearthstone really grows as a character. I feel like he's one of the most developed and one of the most, has the most depth, especially considering he's not the main character. He's a very important side character. Yeah, so that's the group. So obviously I'm going on about all the characters around him. So clearly the strength of this book, and they actually highlight Magnus's strength comes from the group. And the strength of the book itself is the dynamics between the characters. The story is actually pretty good. Keep in mind, this book's not meant for like really older audience. It's more, at the bookstore it was aged 9 to 12, but I feel there's a lot of older themes in it. There's still death and killing and violence, but toned down. And the other great character, this is a mini spoiler, is the sword itself, who ends up, at first, it's just an inanimate sword, but as Magnus, after he finds it, and as he kind of befriends it, the sword starts to come to life and show his own personality. And it talks, and he becomes a major character of the book throughout the trilogy. And he's another form of comic relief as well. The other finally interesting point is that he does not need to find the sword to defeat Surt. The sword is actually prophesized that it belongs to Surt, the giant, the fire giant. What's interesting is that Magnus needs to find the sword to prevent Surt from using it. So the dilemma in the conflict becomes, well, why would I go and confront Surt exactly where he wants me to be with the sword that he's looking for, when I could just like avoid him? And then it becomes this dilemma of like, well, it's this whole thing of, yeah, I could do that and always face this possibility of he's going to get it anyway, or I could just face this problem head on and prevent it from actually happening. So it's kind of relatable to any real life situation where, you know, we could just sit at home and avoid things that we should be doing, or we could just confront them head on, whatever it is. I can't think of a specific example. But yeah, I've been going on and on. I also watched, oh my gosh, Avengers: Infinity War around the time I was reading this trilogy. So like the things with Thor and the Norse mythology really became relatable even more. Yeah, so that's the Magnus Chase Book 1, Sword of Summer. It's a really good trilogy. I really grown to like Rick Riordan's books. I want to read them all eventually. But that's all I have to say on that for now. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Have a great week. And if you like my channel, please subscribe. If you like this video, please like it. And tell me what's your favorite, if you've read a Rick Riordan book, what's your favorite of those? And that's all I have to say. Take care.